And he said, so when you pray for patience, does God give you patience or does he give you the opportunity to be patient? And I didn't like that because it hit home for me, and I realized, yeah, ever since I started praying for patience, things been trying my patience,
Welcome to the first episode of Pushing Your Peers podcast. I'm your host, Leo, and I am thrilled to embark on this new journey with you. Today, we're diving into two P's of happiness, parents and patience, inspired by my new book, Happy, the P's to Push to a Happier Life. And what better way to kick off our journey than by introducing you to a true champion of positivity and community empowerment, Benson Williams. Benson is not only the founder of BTSW Productions, but also a filmmaker, public speaker, and native of the beautiful Turks and Caicos Islands. His dedication to his craft and his community is truly inspiring. Sit back, relax, and let's push our peers. And one of the pieces that I talked about in my book is parents and their impact on our well-being and our happiness. And I want to open this discussion with that, if you don't mind, going deep with me, with your parental relationships. I know your father would have passed away, and you have your mother who's your biggest cheerleader, by the way. If you've ever been to a Trey's event, you know Trey's mother is the loudest in the room when it comes to him and his accomplishments. But, walk me through that, that grieving period of, you losing your father and you finding a way to move on, because you have a lot of people who stay in that grieving state and they carry it as a burden. But how were you able to push through that?
Well, to be honest, I mean, the short answer is kicking and screaming. I was 17 when he passed away, just about to leave high school. And then I feel like a lot of things kind of crumbled in a way when he passed. And I think at the time I had somewhat of a mature mind, but I was still only 17. And those kind of things kind of put things into perspective. Like there was a lot that life had for me that I just wasn't prepared for, that I believe, having a father, having a father figure there would have probably helped a lot, right. So it was a shock, obviously. And then, without being too gruesome, I didn't take it well. It was not something that I wanted to hear. It was not something I wanted to accept for a good maybe 3 years. So I turned to poetry and just kind of unleashing pretty much on everyone, just words and a lot of aggression. Because, I'm still a teenager. There's still a lot of testosterone and there was still a lot of emotional processing that I had to do. And obviously, it's much better now. Everything is good now, but it didn't start that way. It was definitely a journey, a long journey, I would say.
But when was the turning point for you? Because you say there was a 3-year period where you were using outlets to, I guess, let off all of these pent up emotions. But where did you find your breaking point?
I think my breaking point was me realizing how ridiculous it was. As you know, I moved to the UK probably not immediately, but a few months after the fact. About a month after I graduated, I went straight over to the UK and I stayed there for a while. And every year around the same time, I would tell one of my UK friends, oh yeah, my daddy passed away however many years ago. And although most of them were pretty sensitive to it, they were like, in a way, like, it's been some time. You can't really use that as an excuse. And I realized that they were right, because I would do certain things behavioral wise, and it was inexcusable. And I didn't realize it was inexcusable because my excuse was, well, my daddy passed away, so like it was almost like a free pass. And then, the years started to rack up. And after that 3-year period where I was able to kind of process everything, and then with Facebook memories, I was able to kind of do self-reflection and not kind of guess what I said, know exactly what I said, because I posted a lot of what I said. And I was like, one year at one time, I was just looking at the stuff that I said, and I was like, this is ridiculous. And my only reason was because my daddy died. How long ago? Yeah, it's not very manly, it's not something someone who is growing should do. So I think that was my turning point, that self-reflection, that epiphany point.
There's a chapter in my book where I talk about us wearing our trauma as a cape. And I can see that you went through that period where, it's like, look at me, blah, blah, this, even though it's traumatic, it's like, okay, this happened, but life goes on. I'm not trying to be blunt when I say that, but, the truth is life goes on. And I guess my next question to you is, now that you realize that you were wearing this trauma as a Superman sort of cape, and what was your first action step, when you came to this realization? What was the first thing that you did to get on a path to well-being and happiness?
I think I did a lot of things all at once, to be honest. I prayed for sure. And then I followed a lot of motivational pages. Like I needed a lot of Instagram wasn't really popping yet, but as soon as I got on Instagram, it was motivational. Obviously, it's called X now, but back then it was called Twitter. And I was on Twitter, I was on Facebook, on YouTube, everywhere. As a matter of fact, there's probably not that many motivational speakers that I don't know of, because that's how much motivation I needed to keep pushing, to keep going forward. Because when you're running a marathon and you're in front and you're tired, you can't really show that, because everyone behind you who's coming up behind you, they're looking at you like, well, I mean, if you get tired, then I know for sure I can't make it. So there was a lot of pressure, and I wanted to kind of combat that with prayer and I guess healthy conversations where I actually let other people talk and not just kind of make it all about me. And like you say, wear that trauma as a cape and play the victim all the time. And then ultimately through all of that, I realized that it was patience that I really needed, because what I want, the result that I wanted, I would need patience to get it. So when I discovered that patience was what I really needed to finish this race, finish this marathon, to get to where I am now, that's what I started gunning for.
Powerful, Trey. Powerful. I want to touch on your mother, your biggest cheerleader. I don't know if you have a bigger cheerleader than her. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but I've never met. I've met some parents, but your parents is one of those parents that you see in the movies, that's in the stands with the blowhorn, and they're just, man, that's my Trey, that's my boy. So, tell me about you and her relationship, and how has it grown throughout the years, after the passing of your father, obviously.
Yeah, of course. I think it was rough, because my mother is more of an academic. So she wants all of her children to also be academics. And with BTSW Productions, obviously I'm not that inclined on the academic side. I may be well spoken for some people. I may be eloquent with the way I explain things, but that doesn't necessarily qualify me to be someone who would be, working a 9 to 5 or in a job or some type of customer service type role where there's always one stationary location. And that was, I would say, the biggest riff that we had, because everything else, she was very supportive. I'm very supportive of whatever she does. She was always my biggest supporter, to be honest. I think, and if you can believe it, the one person who was more supportive of me than my mother was my father. And anyone who knows my father would say, yeah, hands down, right? I mean, I'm named after him. He was Benson Williams. I'm Benson Williams. Like, there is no question about it. And he would, I don't know if you ever had one of those embarrassing people who would insert certain things into conversations that didn't need to be there. That was my daddy. My daddy, well, my son, he could do that. He does that. And I don't even know about the topic. That was my daddy. My mommy would just be like, oh, let me see. Cause my son, she would say it once, but my daddy wouldn't drop it. You see what I'm saying? So I think they kind of had a similar approach in that way. But as far as my mother and I's relationship, it was just that academic thing. She really wanted me to be an academic, a lawyer or a doctor or something of that sort. But when it comes to whatever I actually did, once she was convinced that this is what I want, and I show her that this is something that is fruitful or can be fruitful, she supports me, and I always appreciated that.
Trey, you come from a Christian background. In the Bible, it talks about, we honoring our mothers and our fathers. Do you believe that the path that you're on right now is a path that's bringing honor to them and also happiness to you?
Well, I do believe that it's definitely bringing happiness to me. I am at a stage where I do not want to work for anyone. I don't mind working with a lot of people, and a lot of people could vouch for that. But working for someone is where there's a happiness deficit, let's say. When it comes to honoring my mother and my father, I sincerely hope so. I sincerely hope that my daddy would be proud. If he was still alive, he would be proud of everything that I'm doing. I can only assume that because my mother seems to be fairly proud and supportive, that he would be as well, because they didn't disagree a lot when it came to us, their children. Obviously, every relationship, every marriage, they have their disagreements and whatnot. Their relationship probably had whatever kinds of disagreements, but when it came to raising us, they were always on one accord. If my mommy said no, my daddy probably gonna say no. If my daddy say no, my mommy definitely gonna say no. And I had to say no because they said no a lot.
Right.
And so I believe they would be supportive once again I proved to them, like, listen, this isn't just a phase. This isn't just something that I want to try. This is something that I fully believe in, and I'm going to show you that it's worth believing in, so you can believe in it as well. And through that, I could say that I am honoring them.
Trey, first of all, I just want to thank you for unpacking that with my audience. I can truly say that you are pushing your peers when it comes to being on a trajectory to happiness, and you put in the work through prayer, through self-reflection. That's the effort, that we talk about in the book, because I come from a perspective that, happiness is not something that's going to come to you. You have to go after it. You have to do the work. And from hearing everything you said about getting over the grief of your father, and seeing how you've matured with the relationship with your mother, I can see that you do have a philosophy that you're living by, and you're pushing it, and I commend you for doing that. So the next part of the second part of the show is you telling me a P that you push. Because I have APs that I found to be instrumental, and I know there's a lot more because God has made this world in abundance. So I want you to tell me a P that you push in your day-to-day life.
Well, I try every day. I know I successfully did it majority of the time since I started trying. But my P would be patience. I remember I remember watching, I think it was Bruce Almighty, and Morgan Freeman, the actor who played God. Yeah, he played God. He's talking to somebody, and he said, "So when you pray for patience, does God give you patience, or does He give you the opportunity to be patient?" And I didn't like that because it hit home for me, and I realized, yeah, ever since I started praying for patience, things been trying my patience. And it's like, okay. And it took some time. Obviously, I had to wait for that. And I thought that was the most ironic thing. And for a long time, I was just frustrated with God, to be honest. It's like, how are you going to make me wait for the very thing that I'm praying to be able to wait for? You know what I mean? It just, the math wasn't mathing. You know what I mean? But I think after, achieving the patience that I actually wanted and then pushing that helped me to be more patient. In a sense, it helped me to be more patient with people and to be more patient when things are not necessarily going my way. Essentially, be more mature about adult situations. I know that there's different kinds of patience because after maybe 7, 8 years of living in the UK, I still wasn't that patient when it comes to waiting for the bus. So I'm like, okay, clearly there are certain things where patience, it just don't equate to other patients, dealing with people who may not necessarily understand your language or understand exactly what you're saying. That's a different kind of patience. So the second one was the one that I was praying for because I just couldn't. I was not a patient person, let's just say. And I was like, you know what? I need to fix this. God, you need to do something here, And so every day to this day, I've been pushing that beat.
No, but you mentioned, praying for patience or praying for something, and God not really giving it to you, but giving you the opportunity to exhibit it.
Mm-hmm.
You had to come to that realization. How did you realize that? Okay, I keep praying for more patience, but God keep putting me in these situations that's making me want to just scream. So when did you did you realize that, okay, God, I'm praying, but you keep doing this? I need to now figure out uh, how I can nurture more patience. So when did that happen for you? And also, what was the process that you used to nurture more patience?
Uh, in a way, you kind of have to torture yourself. It's a lot like exercising, right? I was more so a long distance type. I didn't really do long distance running, but I did do cross country a lot when I was in school. And a lot of other people, because obviously I didn't necessarily look like I was a track star. So they're like, how are you doing this? And especially through cadets, it was the kind of mental conditioning of saying, this is something that you have to do. You have to be in control of your body instead of the other way around. And that also applies to certain things like patience. So I had to torture myself by having conversations and putting myself in situations where I had to be patient. Otherwise, my desired result just wouldn't happen. I would intentionally talk to people that I know was difficult to talk to. Um,
So a
and, and
deliberate
just as a
approach.
just yeah,
Yeah.
and just as an added piece of seasoning, I had to make sure that they didn't figure out that I was using them as a task dummy, basically. So I had to have a lot of difficult conversations with difficult people or disagreeable people in order to kind of gauge myself, exercise my own patient self so that I can tell if I'm getting more patient or not. Essentially, that was the practical side. And obviously the Bible say pray without ceasing, right? So I had to continuously pray for the same thing over and over. And that within itself required patience because it's like, man, I done been through this. I don't talk about this. I don't ask for this over and over and over. And the more frustrated I got about asking for the same thing, the more I realized, okay, well, I don't have it yet. And like I said, I have to have it in order to get it. I have to exercise this patience in order to get the desired result, which is to be able to deal with these kind of situations and not get frustrated. So as long as I'm frustrated by it, clearly I ain't got it. So I got to keep going. You see what I'm saying?
Appreciate
If
that.
you're trying to, you're trying to run a mile in under an hour or whatever it is, you have to keep doing it until you do it. Keep trying until you get there.
And be patient with yourself through the process, because sometimes we want it so fast. You know, we want to run a mile just after 1 week of being on the track on the 1 hour, and it doesn't work like that. You know, you have to be patient and know your body type, which takes, again, patience as well, because you got to learn that me and Trey have different body types. So the way he eats and the muscle groups that he's working, I probably won't have to eat as much and work those same muscle groups. And that process takes so much time. And so sometimes we shoot ourselves in the foot because we are trying to do things in comparison to others, and we're trying to be as fast. But really and truly, we got to take that time out to learn ourselves.
I like that you said that, because if I could add on to that, it's kind of like that same patience analogy with running, because the time that it takes you to run a mile versus the time that it takes me to run a mile would not be the same time. You might have a faster pace than I do because of all of the things that you mentioned before. And what that means for a lot of people is you have to have enough patience to not compare yourself to someone who may have a faster pace than you, because you feel like you want what they have, but you are not them. If you are not them, you can't get what they got, even if you're doing what they did. It doesn't work that way.
Trey, you've been great, and you know we spoke on 2Ps today: parents and patience. And I just want to double back to parents. You know, because since 2020, COVID-19, a lot of us have lost loved ones, specifically parents. Especially in this country, Turks and Caicos Islands, where we're based. We know a few people amongst our peers that's lost their parents, whether it's to the disease or gun violence or natural causes. You know, what advice do you have for a person that's where you were in that 3-year period and you were wearing your trauma as a cape? What advice would you give to that person right now who's listening?
I think a lot of times as humans, we run away from the negative experiences. And the advice that I would give to anyone who was even remotely close to my path is, I would even give myself this advice if I could give myself this advice, is don't run away from those negative experiences, those negative emotions. If you feel sad, be sad. If you feel angry, you can be angry. Even the Bible says you can be angry, you just can't sin, right? It's easier said than done, but that's only when you start. If you keep the mentality that a part of the human experience is to not be happy all the time, when those other emotions and those other experiences come and you embrace it, it won't last as long. Now, obviously, I'm speaking from experience, and sometimes this experience obviously don't feel good. But if you can endure that, if you can go through those negative emotions, then when the positive ones come and you take that same approach, you would be able to enjoy that as well.
You know,
and sometimes people enjoy the negative emotions.
Yeah, you know,
they're taking pictures when they're crying, all of that.
I love that you say that, Trey. You know, it reminds me of that phrase, you know, out of the darkness comes light. You know, out of our darkest moments, we find happiness. And, you know, that's kind of why I wrote this book, is because, you know, out of my darkest moment, you know, child parental abandonment, you know, I found happiness in conquering that trauma. You know, I would have met my father in 2 years ago, and you know, I can't explain the emotions I felt. You know, hugging my physical father for the first time, 20 plus years. You know, I think since then my life has just been a lot lighter, because I meeting him buried so many negative emotions that, you know, I had about myself. Because a lot of times with a parental rejection, you kind of feel like, you know, the parent hates you or blah blah blah. So when you actually, you know,
Of
get
course,
to
of
meet
course.
them and see it's not the case, you know, you kind of realize that, you know, yeah, I'm pretty cool guy after all. You know, I'm not really as bad of a
Mm,
person that I thought. Even though your friends will reinforce these things, you still hang on to that, you know, because that's the trauma in it.
mm,
And so I was able to, you
yeah.
know, overcome that and, you know, live a more, I wouldn't say every day is happy, but like you say, because when you feel those emotions, you gotta dive into the anger, dive into your fear, dive into whatever you're feeling. Just feel it, you know. Be patient with yourself in that, you know. But at the same
Mm,
time, I know how to find happiness, and I know that. And I know that happiness is always on the other side of those emotions once I stick with it, you know. And that's why, you know, it's
mm,
important to not try to escape those emotions, but to go through the process so that, you know, when you finally make it through, you're able to relate to other people and teach them how to get through it. So Trey, I know I said a lot, but I just want to thank you so much for being a
mm.
part of this
It's
experience.
fine.
It's always a great conversation when me and you link up. And
Always.
I have one final question. And
Shoot.
uh, you know, I gotta end with my questions now. And this question is, you
Of
know,
course.
if you had, don't say your father, uh, but if you had,
Okay.
if you had an opportunity to have a conversation with someone that's going on to the afterlife, who would that person be?
I think
Going on to be with the ancestors.
I think I would want to have a conversation with I think I would want to have a conversation with Malcolm X, to be honest.
Why Malcolm X?
Um uh I think because obviously Denzel Washington made the movie and they kind of had to use creative license, let's say. But from the actual documentaries and what is written in textbooks, there were a lot of decisions that seemed like informed decisions, but there was also a lot of gaps, right? So a lot of the questions that I would ask him would probably start off with why. Why did you do this? Why did you do that? Like on the surface level, for example, Malcolm X, for those who don't know, he changed his last name to X because he didn't want to be owned by anyone and he wanted to seem as an anomaly, like an algebraic expression, like X equals Y, etc. But that is, to me anyway, very surface level. So I would say, so why do you call yourself Malcolm X? Why? Like, let's get real deep into that. Why? And why did you abandon the Muslim faith? And why did you like? It would be a lot of
Right
whys,
question.
and I think he would have a bit more information that he did when he was alive, since he'd been dead for however long. And well, obviously, I ain't never been dead, so I know what's on that side. Maybe he got some extra information over there
I'm
too.
pretty sure he
So I'm
does.
like, hey,
I'm pretty sure he does. And
so yeah, it would be
and I
him.
know that conversation would go on forever. Knowing you,
For
because you know
sure.
how to pull information out of people.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Oh
But
yeah.
Trey, thank you so much for being on the first episode of Pushing Your Peers. You have any final words?
None whatsoever. Except this Pastor Flowers. He said, if your life is full of sunshine all the time, that means you are in a desert. Uh, so if your life isn't always happy, that's not necessarily a bad thing, because the only thing in deserts are sand and fake stuff, mirages. So it's okay to not be happy all the time. I think there was a song that said, it's okay not to be okay.
Yeah.
Basically, that's my final word. Sometimes it's okay not to be okay.
I love it, Trey. Thank you so much. If you guys loved this episode and loved Trey, wait, hold on. Can you plug in your social media handles, please? Can you just plug that in before we leave?
Sure. I think if you type in BTSW, literally anywhere, BTSW Productions, BTSW Speaks, Facebook, Twitter, now known as X, Threads, Instagram, YouTube, everywhere. I'm the same name, BTSW Productions, and you'll find me somehow.
Trey, thank you so much. You guys, don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe for more episodes of Pushing Your P. It's been a pleasure. I am your host, LT Bourne, and I'll see you next week.